Hello everyone. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. Another real-time video. I've been experimenting with doing these. I will be just mixing it up like always. Some videos will be like this where it's real time, not super sped up and voiced over. Other videos will be my sped up, voiced over ones, save us all a bit of time. And then my occasional live streams, Sundays, 2 p.m. Central. That's my schedule with the occasional bonus one thrown in when I'm able to do it. And yeah, that's the gist of it and what I'm up to. So I'm going to make a card. Have a rough idea in my head. Don't have a whole lot to say during this intro because I'm not exactly sure what we're going to do, but we'll figure it out as we go along. We'll figure it out. First things first, when this does go up though, everything that I used will be listed and linked in the description box below the video. You just expand the description box. It'll all be there for you. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links, end up ordering something, I get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. That is what helps pay the bills, keeps the lights on, enables me to keep bringing out content. So let us flip the camera down. Watercolor paper. I have been using this for a while now. Actually, I am on my last sheet of this pack. So this is very, very cheap watercolor paper. So Strathmore 200 series. This is what I would classify as like student grade watercolor paper. There are many different kind of levels, and for actual watercoloring, like when you want to do like no line coloring or watercoloring scenes, like real watercoloring, the better the quality your watercolor paper, the better your results. Like if you have been struggling with watercoloring, ignore this. Get the best you can possibly get. It makes a massive difference. It really does. It really does. So I always want to get that out of the way because it's true, and I will never argue that point. I found when I struggled the most, it was the watercolor paper. So this is not that. This is student grade, kind of, in a sense, bottom of the barrel watercolor paper, which also means it's cheap. I love it. A pack of this is less than like $10. I will have a link for it because I contacted Simon Says Stamp and I got them to start carrying this because I have really been enjoying it. I've been playing with it a lot and it works amazingly well with the Simon Says Positively saturated inks. And another reason I've really been liking it is because it is very lightweight. Even the other cheap watercolor paper that I use a lot, which is the Canson XL, love that stuff. I'll not stop using that either. The Canson XL is 120 pounds. I don't have a full pack to show you. It's similar in color, but it is much heavier weight. Like this stuff is very sturdy, and I really like my Canson XL. It is great. What I like about this is about a 90 pound weight. It is thinner, so a little bit flimsy, but I really, really, really like it for die cutting. A lot of my die cutting, especially when we're doing multiple layers, I have found that the heavier weight papers, like my cards are just getting way too thick and heavy and bulky, and I wasn't liking it. So I was playing with this stuff, and I love it for die cutting. I've been using it for backgrounds too, because, I do them separately. I adhere them to a heavyweight card base. So I've really been happy with this. So that's just that on that. I'll have it linked. And like I said, I have used up an entire pack so far of this. It's just, I love it. I really love this stuff. And I have extras. I'm going to keep using it. So I'm saving those pieces. I will come back to that. But what I want to do is normally with watercolor paper, no idea what I got on there. These, because they are 9 inches by 12 inches. That's kind of the sort of standard size. Just is what it is. So what I do with packs like this is I take them and I cut them in half. So I will line this up at 6 inches. Roughly. Doesn't have to be perfect. So that cuts it in half. And then I will line it up at 4.5 inches. Because like I said, it's 9 by 12. So 4.5 by 6 is half half that. So that basically gives me 4 panels. And then this is what I just work with most of the time, since again, as a card maker, and a card maker that makes A2 size most of the time. So then I've got 4 panels. So I'll use this for backgrounds, die cut, etc., etc. So the other pieces we'll set aside because I'll die cut those later. So I've just got a piece of the watercolor paper, and I am going to stamp this first. I'm going to just use, this is the thank you text background. I've used this many times. Many times. Doesn't need to be perfect. I'm just going to put it face up. And I'm going to ink this up with Cozy Positively Saturated ink. I am not trying to, I'm not aiming for perfection here. In fact, I've got like this is just a dry baby wipe. But I'm going to like go over this with that. So it's going to pick up a lot of that ink as well. And then I'm just going to press this into this background. There we go. So again, not aiming for perfection because we're going to go like over this too. So then I'm going to tape this to just a hardboard. Simple hardboard panel. I've been using these for years. I use this to tape down watercolor paper, but also if I've got like a bunch of pieces of things that need to dry, I'll set them on my little hardboard and then set this off somewhere. This just keeps your watercolor paper flat because I'm going to add, ink and all the things to it. And this keeps it from curling because when you start adding a bunch of water to watercolor paper, it immediately starts to curl up and then everything starts running off the sides and that's not fun. So taping it down to keep it flat. Low tack, any low tack tape will work. This is just like satin tape from Altenew. Painter's tape works really well. Just something kind of low tack. It doesn't need to be perfect. My goal with this is not to create like a frame or a border. It's just to hold it in place like that. That's all I need. So I got that. And then I'm going to use my little plastic palette and then re-inkers. You can do this with watercolors. You can do this with the ink pads and just smush them. Any water reactive ink will work. The thing with re-inkers, always to remember, kind of beating a dead horse here, but not everyone watches every single video. Re-inkers are meant to re-ink your ink pads. There are additives in them to prevent them from drying out because you don't want your ink pads to dry out. You can watercolor with them. I do it a lot, but the thing to remember is you need to add water. Do not paint directly with the re-inkers. I don't recommend that because they just won't dry because it's too concentrated. So, and you don't need much. That's why I like playing with the re-inkers is I can just use a little drop and it's more than enough. So I'm just going to add a bit to my palette. I pulled out SEAFOAM. I have EARL here. It's just a gray. I've got Gingerbread. It's just a kind of warm brown. And then I've got WOODSY, which is a deeper, kind of very warm gray. I probably won't need much of that WOODSY. And it looks like all the same on there. But just give it a sec. And the other thing I need to do before I forget, let's get that out of the way. Let's move this out as I'm going to put my flour sack cloth down just because I do anticipate me making a bit of a mess because that's fun. And then my jar of water, palette back, and then just a big old brush. Any brush will work for something like this. Don't need anything fancy. And then I also have an extra cloth off the side to like wipe my brush on. And I'm also gonna lightly add some water to this. So because I stamped this with Simon's Cozy Positive Saturated ink, and I got re-ink on me, it's water reactive, so this is gonna move. I'm fine with that. I am completely and totally fine with that. I'm fine with it mixing with the color as I add it. Because again, this is just the background, and I'm thinking I might add a stencil over this as well. We'll see. We'll see. Like I kind of said at the beginning, I have a rough idea of what I want to do. We're just going to let these colors blend and get to know each other. And there's that woodsy. I love woodsy. It is like such a gorgeous neutral. Okay. So then I'm going to start taking some of this. And while everything is still wet, when you add splatters like this, it just spreads everywhere. And that's what I want. I don't want defined splatter. I just want everything to be mucky and move around and do whatever it wants to do. So we'll even splatter whatever I've got left of the SEAFOAM color. I can do the same thing with this gray. Just like that. And then I didn't splatter this one, so let's add that too. There we go. So, super mucky background. I'm okay with this. Now I just need to let it completely dry. So I will be back in a second with the magic of video editing, and this will be fully dry. This is now completely dry, or dry enough. And I'm going to use the honeycomb stencil over this, along with some just opaque matte texture paste, just to give some texture to this background. And I am not going to apply it perfectly even. I'm just going to kind of let it do its thing. Just spread it over the stencil. Like so. There we go. And then same thing, I gotta let this dry. So while that is drying, I'm gonna clean up my stencil and my palette knife and everything else, and then we'll be back. So this is still wet. I'm going to set this aside somewhere. There we go. Set that aside, let it dry. Now, while the first layer was like drying, I pulled out the Tattered Daisy wafer die set, and I die cut a bunch of the pieces from that same watercolor paper. And I'm going to stick these to my Stampin' Stencil mat. Brutus Monroe makes these for Simon Says Stamp. And I have a couple of them that I keep dedicated to sticking die cut pieces and watercoloring. It is, for me, sort of the easiest way to keep all the pieces, you know, because it's got like a temporary adhesive on it, or a low tack adhesive. I'm going to put all the greenery on a separate piece so that just to make my life a little bit easier. So I don't wash these. They get super stained with all of the inks and watercolors and paints and whatnot. I just rinse them in the sink. I just rinse it with water and then let it air dry, and then reuse over and over and over again. I've been using these same mats for a few years now, and This one is definitely starting to lose its stick, but I've been using it, like I said, for years. So there's all the stems. So all I got to do, I die cut everything multiple times because my plan is to do like a rainbow of flowers. Green, blue. So see how many we can fit onto here. Green, green, blue. Green, blue. We can fit one more for sure. There we go. And that one. And then we can tuck in a couple more. And then all the flower centers we'll just keep up here. Like that. So now I've got all my pieces just held in place. Held in place enough. It doesn't need to hold it like super strong. Just enough so I can, you know, muck around and do my thing. And then for this, I'm going to use more Pawsitively saturated reinkers. So I've got apple. And since I'm doing only like one flower with each, like one drop should be enough. So I've got apple, mandarin, sunbeam, limelicious, surf, and then violet. Just like that. So we've got that. I'm going to use a slightly smaller brush. Oh, and then for the flower centers, I'll just use WOODSY because that'll work. Boop. So I'm going to get each piece wet with water first. So there's 2 layers to this flower. So I'll get both pieces wet and then pick up the color and slap it on. And I'm not doing like any blending or anything like that because I'm doing just one color per like flower. And it also does not need to be perfect because there ain't nothing wrong with a little bit of texture. So there's red. Clean off my brush, which always with red is a little bit more work because red likes to stain. So we did red. Now we're going to do orange. There we go. And I've said this before, but if watercoloring intimidates you, but you're also intrigued by it, you know, you want to watercolor, you want to do things like this, cannot recommend enough doing something like this. Like grab some die cuts, die cut some watercolor paper, and then, ooh, I'm making a mess, and then add color. And it doesn't have to be like reinkers. You could use actual watercolors. You could use, if you don't have reinkers, but you've got the ink pads, you could mush your ink pads onto your palette. Yeah, any water reactive type stamping ink will work. And then obviously watercolors, liquid watercolors, etc. Those will work as well. And I highly recommend you try it because it's fun. And when it's die cut pieces, it's just very easy. We're not worried about like stamp lines or depth or shading or anything like that. You know, you can just add some color. And then once you're kind of used to that, you can start mixing colors, you know, have fun with it. do 2 colors, like do a red and a yellow, or, you know, a pink and a purple, etc. And just keep playing. Because with watercolor, more than anything, the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it, the more you start to see how things react, how they work on the paper, all of that. And yeah, you'll get better and better at it and just more comfortable with it. That one. There we go. Green. And then we'll do the surf blue one. There we go. And by getting everything wet first, it just enables the color to move. But that's another thing you can experiment is do, you know, wet on wet like this, or you can do wet on dry. It's just kind of a personal preference and also just kind of the look you're going for. And just have fun with it. Okay, this one will be purple. And I do have one extra flower. My plan is probably to use that on the inside of the card. And I'm gonna do that extra flower that'll go inside. I'm gonna do it purple because I just have more of it. I must put a little extra on my palette that I didn't realize. Ain't nothing wrong with that. So we'll paint this one purple as well. Let's get it wet and then add the color. Because you guys know I gotta have something on the inside of my cards, so this just works. Purple for that one. There we go. And then finally, we'll do all these little flower centers, and these I'll just do with that WOODSY ink right there. Add the color to this. There we go. Okay, so that needs to be also set aside to dry, and then while that's drying, I need to do all the stems, and for those I grabbed Field ink, so just a different shade than the Limelicious. That's what I use for the actual flower, and then Field Green for the greenery. And for these, because these are a bit narrower, I'm not even going to bother like painting with water first. I'm just going straight in with the re-inker mixed with water. Like I said, you do not want to paint directly with re-inkers because it will have a heck of a time drying, or it just might not dry at all. So we can go in with this. Keep adding water. And then add that. This is also a nice way, especially if you don't have a lot of colored cardstock either. You know, you can have a pack of watercolor paper and either some ink pads or some re-inkers, and the sky's the limit. There we go. Just like that. We'll paint this guy. And then just like everything else, we just need to let this dry. And then once these and the flower pieces are dry, I just pop them off this, and then I will rinse these in the sink with some water, let them air dry, and they're good to go. All my pieces are dry. So now we just need to assemble them, which is super simple. Just dab a glue at the base. And these kind of just line up like so. Like that. And then our little flower centers. Again, just a little bit of glue. And we've got a flower. So I'm just going to repeat this process until I have all of my flowers assembled. And rather than have you guys sit here watching me rinse and repeat tediously over and over again, this is only going to take like a couple minutes anyway, but rather than have you guys sit through it, I will be back when they're all assembled. Flowers are assembled. I didn't attach the stems. I want to do these separately. Again, method to the madness. My background, I die cut that, and I'll show that in a second here. I die cut that with one of the more A2 rectangle wafer dies, just the second largest, which also helped kind of flatten this out just a smidge. And yeah, I'm just going to adhere the stems individually like this. Just run a little line of glue down down the stem, and I'm using the Simon Says Stamps Positively Perfect Craft Glue. This was the newer glue they released, and I've used it a little bit here and there, and so far so good. The thing that I've noticed for me in my climate, in my garage, is it will clog if tuck this one under. If I don't, like if I just leave it sitting, like I'm not using it for a few minutes, it will clog. But that happens with every single glue I have ever used. So I've mentioned with all my glues, like they clog. I don't care. I keep pins and a little pin cushion on my desk to deal with that, and it's fine. So yeah, so far so good though with this glue. I am enjoying it. What do I want to? A couple of these I'll just snip off. Do some editing here and just adhere just the stem. And that way I can move the leaves to a different spot so that's not looking like a little can-can line like it is now. In fact, I can do that even with that one. Cut that one out of there. And then that way I can like selectively edit where I'm placing some of these leaves. And it just will create a bit of a different look so that it's not quite so repetitive. Do that. And I can stick one like that. And again, that's the nice thing about this watercolor paper, is because it's a lighter weight, like this isn't super bulky, you know? Like it's still pretty thin, you know? Even though I've done like all these little layers of leaves and whatnot, which I love. Because I don't mind some bulk. I don't mind dimension. Obviously, I love dimension, but sometimes it just ends up weighing the card front down too much. And yeah, this watercolor paper doesn't do that. And especially with some of the really heavily layered, like this set isn't it. This little die set on its own isn't super heavily layered, but I'm doing a bunch of them. And yeah, it can get a little crazy sometimes. It can get just a little crazy. Okay. Let's again do some little bits of editing here. And we'll add in these last couple leaves. That. I'll stick that one like that. Oop. Just like so. Stick that one like so. Okay. I've got kind of my bouquet going here. And then what I want to do is start gluing down these flowers. So we're going to do these in sort of a rainbow-ish order. Yellow, green, move that one down a little bit so I can fit everything. Yeah, so we've got just a big old bouquet. Love it. Love it. That one. Let's stick that one in there. Tuck that one under a little bit. Stick this one like that. And then the purple one, I can tuck this one in right here. Just get you in there. There we go. Got that. And then of course we're going to add some splatter. So those pieces I'll save because those will go on the inside of the card. This I want to add some splatter to. So let's put that like that. Let's grab my white gouache and we will put a bit of that onto my palette. And then I can thin this down with some water. There we go. Thin that down, get that little blob mixed up. There we go. Here we go. Okay, so let's add some splatter. Yep. Okay, I just need to let this dry. I think I'm going to add a bit of black splatter as well, but I need to let this dry first, so I'll be back in a second. Okay, let's add a little bit of black splatter just because we can. Don't need very much. And the reason I let the white splatter dry first is I don't like it when the two mix, because sometimes that happens. Personal preference and me getting a little nitpicky over splatter, but it is what it is. So we're just gonna, same thing, add a bit of water to my gouache to thin it out. There we go. And then I don't add as much. Or I say that and then I add more because, you know, it is what it is. That's good. That's good. Same thing. Now I just gotta let this dry. So it's still drying, but while that's drying, for my sentiments, I'm using the CZ Design I See You Easy strips. Anything labeled Easy strips coordinates with the Easy strips rectangles wafer die set. There's some stamp sets. There's a bunch of pre-printed packs like this, and they just come like so. And then all we got to do is use the wafer die to die cut it. So I'm going to line this up. Make sure I've got it straight and centered like that. There we go. And then we're gonna run that through my die cut machine. And then I've got all my sentiments die cut in one pass. I'm obviously not going to use all of these on this card. So all the extras I just save in the packaging it comes in. So put these back in there, and then kind of like those two. Here for you. Let's do let's do that. And that one, I think. So the rest, I just stick in the packaging. So next time I go to use this, I've already got a whole bunch of these sentiments die cut, ready to go. Love it so much. There we go. There we go. So we got that. Spotter is still taking its time to dry. My card base is top folding A2 white note card, so 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I've got my, I'll do that. And that. Why not? And there's still space to write something, you know, to the recipient. I'm going to snip off just a little bit more of the stem. And then that way I can adhere this. And my glue, like I said, my glue's clogged. So take a pin. There we go. Take a pin, unclog it, and then we're good to go. So I can run a little line of glue like that. Press that into place. I can add this little flower like that. I think I'll skip the "You're Amazing" because it's so big, and I'll just do the "Sending Hugs." Gives me just a little bit more space. And then I can press this into place on the inside of my card, just like so. So we've got that. And then I just need to reinforce, where did there it is. Reinforce the fold on the card. And I'm going to carefully adhere this. Most of the splatter's dry. There's a couple spots that are not fully. So I'm going to try to be careful. So I don't manage to get, black gouache all over myself and the card. There we go. So center that. Make sure I've got that centered. There we go. Oh, there was a couple spots. Just making sure. Yep. Okay. And then put the lid on my glue. Put the lid on. And then for the sentiment, I am going to pop this up with some thin foam squares. I'll just pop these into place just to give us, again, just a smidge of dimension, but nothing too crazy. So get those. And then I want to center it like that. And then do the same with this one. Just like that. And then I do need some bling of some sort. So I'll be right back. Okay, we're going to do, pretty sure these are the gold ones. Yes, Simon's Gold Pawsitively Dazzling Gems. So we're going to tuck a few in here. Like that. Tuck a couple more. Yes, I like that. I like that. So, I'm going to adhere these into place with just little dabs of glue. Just pick them up with my little embellishment wand, press them into place. And then we just got to let the glue dry. There we go. There we go. And again, put that lid on the glue. Put the bling away before I manage to flip this dish and that goes everywhere because that's a given. Okay, move all this out of the way so we can zoom in a little bit. There is our finished card. So we got all sorts of like texture, that mucky background. It just works. I wanted it to be pretty neutral so that the color could really pop. And even though we've got like a lot of layers and dimension, this card is not that thick. Like, you know, it's actually quite thin. Because again, that watercolor paper, I love this stuff. I love this stuff. And yeah, positively saturated reinkers for very simple watercolor. So we got bling and texture, and then just a very simple inside, just like so. So, as always, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, for thumbs upping and commenting. It helps a ton. I really do appreciate it. It just tells the robot overlords you guys like what you see. And subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye! Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't, I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!